Undercover CEO buys a semi-truck at his own dealership. Could not believe what he hears from customers. The engine of the used 2018 Freightliner roared as Ethan Reynolds stepped out of the cab, slipping the keys into his pocket. He had just handed over $45,000 in cash under the table for a truck he technically already owned. He kept his hat low and walked into the dealership office to get a receipt, still playing the role of a desperate independent trucker. Behind him, two men waited in line, both drivers, both weathered by the road. One of them muttered just loud enough for Ethan to hear. "They scammed my cousin here last month. Sold him a truck with a rebuilt engine, called it certified. Guy's rig broke down in Utah the next day." The other replied bitterly, "They did worse to me. Took my trade-in for $10,000, sold it 2 days later for $40,000. Told me mine was junk. I had to sleep in my cab for 2 weeks to make up the loss." Ethan froze. His hand tightened around the receipt. He turned slightly, listening. "This place is a fucking trap for broke drivers," the first man said. "They smile while they rob you." Ethan's heart pounded. He had just bought a truck off the books from his own employees, and now standing in the same room were two customers exposing a pattern of theft, lies, and manipulation. The pieces started falling into place. This wasn't bad salesmanship. This was a full-blown criminal operation. Inside his own company, Ethan Reynolds was no ordinary man walking into a dealership. He was the founder and CEO of Titan Freight Motors, a company he built with his own two hands after spending 2 decades hauling freight across every major highway in America. From sleeping in his cab during blizzards to missing Christmases with his kids, Ethan knew the grind of the road, and he had vowed to create a dealership that would never take advantage of people like him. Titan Freight had grown from a single dusty lot to one of the largest commercial truck dealerships in the country, with a reputation for honesty, fair trade-ins, and real support for hard-working drivers. But lately, whispers had reached Ethan's ears. Rumors of shady deals, inflated fees, and desperate drivers getting ripped off by the very company meant to help them. He tried confronting the regional manager, but all he got were polished reports and forced smiles. So Ethan did what few CEOs would ever dare. He went undercover. He pushed open the front door of the very dealership he built from the ground up. Dirt-stained jeans, steel-toe boots, and a trucker hat pulled low made him look like just another broke driver hoping to catch a break. He stood in the waiting area for 10 full minutes. No one greeted him. No one made eye contact. Finally, a woman at the front desk looked up from her phone. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, uninterested. "Number just looking to buy a used Freightliner," Ethan replied. Her eyes scanned him, then narrowed. "You probably want to try our satellite lot across town. It's more affordable." Ethan didn't move. "I'll look here." She rolled her eyes. "Wait there. Trent will help you." Trent walked like he owned the lot. Young, cocky, and dripping with fake charm, he wore a gold chain that bounced off his tight black shirt with every step. His sunglasses were too expensive for his paycheck, and his cologne hit harder than a diesel engine. This wasn't just a salesman. This was a predator dressed like a friend. He spotted Ethan and strolled over, flashing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Looking for something cheap," he said, giving Ethan a once-over. "Or something that'll last more than a season." "Something reliable," Ethan replied, keeping his voice gravelly. "Got a route lined up. Just need wheels that won't leave me on the side of the road." Trent chuckled and leaned in as if they were sharing a secret. "Then you're talking to the right guy. You want something real, not one of those shiny, overpriced showroom queens? I got something, but it's not exactly on the list." Ethan raised a brow. "Not on the list?" "Yeah," Trent said with a wink. "Off the books. No paperwork drama, no taxes, no questions. Just cash and keys. Helps keep guys like you on the road." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Off the books?" he repeated, low and careful. Trent smirked. "Come on, man. You think every sale in this place goes through Uncle Sam? Nah, we take care of our people. You want something clean, low miles, still smells new inside, but without the corporate markup. I got you." He motioned for Ethan to follow. They walked to a chain-link gate near the back of the lot. Trent reached into his pocket, pulled out a key fob, and unlocked it. Inside were 3 trucks, all parked tightly together, each tagged with bright orange pending service, do not sell. Stickers. He gestured proudly. This one here, 2018 Cascadia, just 400,000 miles on it. Clean, real clean. We tell the higher-ups it's in for repairs, but truth is, it's ready to roll. 45 grand, clean title. You give me the cash, I give you the truck, and a bill of sale that says it's a 2013 model we refurbished. Less tax, no trace. Ethan stared at the rig. He knew that truck. It had been totaled in Arizona, fire damage in the engine compartment. The insurance company wrote it off. Somehow it was here, cleaned up, repainted, and ready to scam another desperate driver. You sure this is clean? Ethan asked, his voice low. Trent laughed. Man, what do you think this is, a church? You want church, go down the road. You want to make money? You buy this truck. He stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper. You'd be surprised how many of these we move like this. Guys like you don't want paperwork. You want a rig that works, that no one asks about. You hand me the cash, I hand you the keys, and we never met. Sound good? Ethan kept his face blank, but inside rage curled in his gut. This wasn't just a hustle. This was systemic theft, layered in charm and fake discounts. It was a betrayal of everything Titan Freight Motors was supposed to stand for. And Trent? He wasn't some rogue employee. He was too confident, too smooth. This scam was well practiced. Ethan held out his hand. 45 grand cash? Trent slapped his hand and grinned. You won't regret it, my man. Truck like this? She's gonna make you a king on the highway. Ethan nodded slowly, but in his mind, he was already planning who he'd fire first. Inside, Ethan sat in the lounge, pretending to wait for paperwork. The air smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. The fake leather on the chairs cracked when he leaned back. A muted TV droned in the background, playing a news segment about rising fuel prices. No one was watching. Next to him, an older man sat hunched over, shoulders slumped like the weight of the world was pressing down on him. His weathered hands rubbed his temples slowly, the kind of slow that comes from exhaustion deeper than just being tired. Ethan leaned slightly toward him. Everything okay? The man looked over, eyes glassy and tired. Traded in my rig last week. 07 Peterbilt. She wasn't new, but she ran clean. They gave me $10,000. I found her online yesterday. Same truck, listed at 38. His voice cracked with disbelief. They told me the engine was shot, said it wasn't worth more. Ethan's stomach churned. They lied to your face, he said quietly. The man gave a bitter chuckle. Feels like I got mugged in daylight. From across the room, a younger driver, maybe in his early 30s, set down his vending machine snack and spoke up. They did the same to me, he said. Signed papers for a 2020 Volvo. Was told I'd pay $32. But then they slipped in a $12,000 logistics fee after I signed. Said if I didn't pay, I'd forfeit my deposit. He laughed, but it wasn't funny. I've got loads to haul. Contracts lined up. I couldn't afford to walk away. They knew it. They counted on it. The older man nodded slowly, eyes down. They got us all by the throat. Ethan's hands curled into fists in his lap. He looked around the room. 5, maybe 6 other drivers. All of them sitting quietly. Some scrolling on phones, some staring into nothing. But their silence was heavy, like shame, like regret. This wasn't just one bad salesman. This was culture. A toxic, predatory system that saw desperate men and squeezed every last cent from them. Men who had families, mortgage payments, kids waiting at home, and not one person in that building cared what it was doing to them. Ethan clenched his jaw, a vein pulsing in his neck. He'd built this company on grit and fairness. He remembered working the sales floor himself, shaking hands with men who trusted him with their livelihood. Now, these people were being robbed in his name. Every story was another nail in the coffin. Ethan wandered near the finance office, his eyes scanning the cluttered room. That's when he spotted her. Jasmine. She was young, maybe early 20s, and she was focused, flipping through a stack of files with quiet urgency. Her brow furrowed as she glanced through the papers, her fingers moving faster than she could read. She looked up suddenly, startled when she noticed him standing at the door. You can't be back here, she said, her voice a mix of surprise and caution. "I'm just looking for the restroom," Ethan said, his voice casual, but his eyes locked onto her. Then he paused, taking a slow look around the office. "But this place feels a little off, doesn't it?" Jasmine hesitated, her gaze flicking to the door. She glanced around the room quickly before lowering her voice to a near whisper. "You don't know the half of it." Ethan took a step closer, not pushing, just watching her closely. "What's going on here?" Her eyes darted to the door again, then back to him. "I really shouldn't be telling you this," she said, her voice barely audible. "But the manager and Trent, they've set up a system. They take company-owned trucks, sell them cash only off the books. Then they report them as damaged or out of service. The titles don't match the VIN numbers. The prices change week to week, and the trucks get flipped again and again. They're laundering money through this place." Ethan's pulse quickened. His gut told him this was what he'd been sensing all along, but hearing it confirmed, seeing it confirmed, was different. He leaned in slightly. "Do you have proof of all this?" he asked, his tone steady, despite the fire rising in his chest. Jasmine hesitated for a moment, looking at the files in her hands as if weighing her options. Finally, she opened a folder and slid it across the desk toward him. Inside were pages of paperwork, duplicate VIN numbers, forged documents, invoices that didn't match the sales records. Ethan's eyes scanned the pages quickly, his brain piecing together the fraud in front of him. "This is real?" he asked, his voice low. She nodded slowly, her hands trembling slightly as she withdrew her own from the folder. "I saw it all myself. When I asked the manager about it, he told me to mind my lane or lose my internship. I couldn't ignore it after that. I couldn't sleep." Ethan absorbed the weight of her words. This wasn't just a couple of rogue salesmen. This was a well-organized operation designed to steal from customers and manipulate the system. The pieces he'd been collecting over the past few days, the shady deals, the strange pricing, were all starting to fit together. "I'll take care of this," he said quietly, meeting her eyes with a look of understanding. "And you did the right thing by telling me." Jasmine let out a shaky breath, her relief palpable. She nodded. "I hope it helps. I just want to make things right. So if you're enjoying this undercover journey and want to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Undercover Files. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. It's time to expose the lies, the corruption, and the shocking truths behind the scenes." The next morning, the dealership was buzzing with its usual hustle. Customers browsing the lot, salespeople chatting and laughing, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Until Ethan walked in. His presence was commanding. Gone was the scruffy undercover look of the day before. He was clean-cut, dressed in a sharp suit, his confidence radiating off him like a wall of steel. The sudden shift in energy was palpable. Trent, mid-sentence, faltered. His smile dropped, and his eyes widened as he realized who had just entered the showroom. Dean, the floor manager, stepped out of his office and froze in his tracks, his face drained of color. "Ethan?" he asked, voice shaky. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He stood tall, unfazed, his gaze sweeping the room. He held up a folder, thick, official-looking, and unmistakable in its implications. "You lied to customers," Ethan said, his voice ice-cold. "You stole from this company. You ran a black market scam under my roof." Dean's eyes darted around, looking for an escape, but there was no place to hide. "Ethan, we can explain." Ethan slammed the folder onto the nearest desk, the sound cutting through the air like a gunshot. "You sold totaled trucks under fake invoices," he continued, his voice rising with each word. "You pocketed cash. You flipped trades with falsified damage reports. And worst of all, you laughed in the faces of the drivers who trusted this place." He turned to Jasmine, who was standing off to the side, her hands clenched in fists at her sides. "This intern," he said, his voice softening for just a moment, "had the courage to do what none of you could. She exposed everything." A hush fell over the room. The salespeople who had been laughing just moments ago were now silent, their faces a mix of confusion and fear. Ethan's eyes burned with fury as he locked onto Trent. "You wanted to play dirty behind my back? Well, I'm done playing." Trent, now visibly sweating, took a step back, but there was nowhere to retreat. His cocky demeanor had evaporated, replaced with panic. "Ethan, please." "No," Ethan cut him off, his voice like steel. "You've crossed the line. You're both fired, effective immediately." Dean's face twisted in disbelief. "Ethan, you can't." "I can and I will," Ethan said firmly, his voice sharp. "You've ruined everything I built, and you'll pay the price." Ethan turned to the rest of the room. "You want to know the real reason I'm here?" He looked them all in the eye. "To make sure this company never falls to people like you again. From now on, transparency, trust, no more games." He spun on his heel and pointed at Trent and Dean. "Security's on its way. You're done here." In the days that followed, Ethan went to work with a singular mission: to undo the damage done by his own company. The phone calls began immediately. Each one was an echo of betrayal, a painful reminder of how trust had been shattered. But Ethan wasn't just apologizing, he was fixing what had been broken. One by one, he personally called every customer who had been scammed, his voice steady but filled with an undeniable sincerity. He heard the disbelief in their voices, the surprise that someone in his position would care enough to reach out. Some cried, some cursed him, but every single one of them was offered something that had been taken away from them: justice. When the refunds were tallied, it hit over $800,000. It wasn't just money, it was the price of trust regained, the price of accountability. One phone call stood out above the rest. It was to a weary trucker named Carl, a man who had worked his entire life to buy his own rig, only to be swindled out of a fair deal. "Hello?" Carl's voice was raspy, unsure. "Carl, this is Ethan Reynolds. I'm the CEO of Titan Freight Motors." There was a long pause on the other end. Ethan could almost hear Carl's heart skip a beat. "I know what happened," Ethan continued, his voice soft but firm. "I want you to know I'm sorry. We've reviewed your case, and I'm personally making sure you get a full refund for the amount you were overcharged." Carl let out a shaky breath, the weight of the news settling in. You're really gonna fix it?" "I am. It's not just about money. It's about doing right by you and every other person we've hurt." For a moment, Carl was silent, and Ethan could almost feel the relief pouring through the phone. Then in a quiet voice, Carl said, "Thank you. I didn't think anyone would care enough to make it right." Ethan's throat tightened. "I do, and I will." As each refund was processed, the anger and frustration of the truckers began to turn into something more powerful. They were being heard. They were being respected. And slowly but surely, Titan Freight Motors was beginning to rebuild its reputation from the ground up. New policies were rolled out, transparent pricing on every truck, trade-in audits monitored by a third party, a hotline for anonymous whistleblowing directly to Ethan's desk. The company was no longer about making a quick profit. It was about making things right, no matter the cost. While Ethan worked to rebuild his company, one thing was clear: his mission was far from over. And if you want to see more undercover stories like this, hit that subscribe button on Undercover Files. And Jasmine, brave, honest, was promoted to Director of Compliance. She had the integrity and courage to stand up when no one else would. And Ethan knew she would be the one to help the company rebuild its moral foundation. During a meeting, Ethan stood in front of the entire staff. "I started this place with one truck and a promise: to treat drivers with respect. Somewhere along the way, some of you forgot that." He paused, eyes sweeping the room. "We don't sell trucks, we sell trust. And I'd rather burn this building down than let another honest man be cheated inside it." Silence, then applause, real, earned. Outside, truckers shook Ethan's hand. Word spread across state lines: the CEO who went undercover to clean house.